My name is Matthew Hodgson, and today, that's me. I'm an Agile coach, and I work for Xenex Machina. I've already uploaded the presentation to the cloud. I'm going to put it onto our blog site, probably later on today. So, up and running with Kanban. How many of you are using Kanban at the moment? A lot of you? Good. Visualization goes back to this guy. He's to blame, Henry Gantt. And as early as 1910, he was creating visualizations for work. Now, this obviously was manual labour. He wanted to optimise how people worked, and so he created this visualization of all these people and making sure that it created optimal output. And 100 years later, a lot of us are still doing pretty much the same thing. So when the director of a company approached me to do some agile coaching in his organisation, he wanted things like visibility of costs, transparency, improved reporting, and of course what he meant by that was actually more documentation. In starting to talk with the teams, they wanted something a little bit different. They wanted to be a little bit more collaborative. Yes, they wanted to manage their work that they were doing a bit more effectively. They actually wanted less reporting. And they used this term, after I talked to about 4 or 5 team leads, they kept on referring to this thing called shit work. I want to do less shit work. So of course, the director then went and found a project manager and said, well, I want a tool. The tool will do everything for me. People will use it and everything will be excellent and I'll be able to track estimates and actuals and the time spent doing all these tasks so I can work out where to cut costs, where to put in more effort, etc. And of course, the project manager implemented it and told the teams to use it. And of course, the team didn't do anything. Nothing. They sort of put everything in the tool, didn't really do much with it. They still went on and did their work how they were used to doing it. They ignored or they made up hours. They just put in numbers for the sake of it because they knew that that's what was being reported. But the magic things about transparency and visibility was still largely missing. It didn't add anything, didn't add any value to that. And I knew, because I was their coach. I'd been working with this team for only about 2 months. And my job as coach was just to be there to, yes, help them understand what this thing called Agile is, but be a catalyst for change. It wasn't my job to make you change, because I can't make you change. You've got to change yourself. But my job was to be the catalyst for that, and importantly, understand their behaviour in order to be able to create behaviours, good behaviours, that would, as a result, create transparency. So when I'm talking about, when I use the term agile, this is what I'm referring to. An umbrella term, of which for one of my teams that I was working with was using this thing called Kanban. And there are other things that fall under that umbrella. Anyone recognise some of those? FDD, TDD, Scrum, Lean, XP, DAD, BDD, Crystal, which not really used anymore, RUP. But it is an umbrella term. That's all it is. There is no agile methodology. It's actually a way of thinking and a way of working. It is ultimately a philosophy that seeks to look at alternatives for managing and delivering work. The modern Agile movement comes from this, and this is the Agile Manifesto created in 2001. Basically, agility is not a new thing. It came out of Japan in the 50s, and around about 2001, a bunch of people got together who were developing software, and they said, you know, we're approaching this thing from different angles. Let's actually come up with one way that we can all talk about. And originally, they were thinking about talking about it in terms of lightweight methods, but they thought that sounded a bit sort of very, very lightweight, and so they called them Agile. But after a whole weekend in Salt Lake City, they couldn't agree on one Agile method. But what they could agree on was a way of working and thinking about their work. And that meant things like, well, we need tools and processes. Like, I'm not an anti-tools guy, neither were they. But they said, well, but we would prefer to enable people to get together and interact, team members and their customers and their clients. We know we need documentation, but the measure of delivery should be whether we have working software or not. I was talking with Alistair Coburn, one of the signatories to the Agile Manifesto, and he added that in relation to getting feedback about are we delivering the right thing, are we building the right thing, he said, well, one of the reasons we put this into the Agile Manifesto was because, well, if I show you a piece of paper that has a design on it, or I give you some documentation, a specification, or I give you working software, which one is going to give me, because I'm looking after my team, which one is going to give me the highest quality feedback? Documentation? Working software? Yeah. I'm going to get higher quality feedback from something that actually works and something that someone can actually touch and play with. Doesn't mean we don't need documentation, but the preference is, well, working software. We heard from Pamela earlier today about, do we need contracts? Yes. Should we be arguing about contracts? No. Let's actually put some effort into collaborating with our clients. Let's create relationships through which we can understand what they need. And lastly, do we need a plan? Yes, we need plans. We need planning. However, if we find ourselves in a position where the plan is no longer relevant, we should actually be responding to change, particularly for market benefit. So for this team, out of all of the methods, all of the frameworks that they could use, we decided that Kanban was going to be probably the best fit for them. And this is it at its basics. There is a list of stuff that is yet to do. There is a bunch of stuff that is in progress, a bunch of stuff that is done, an area typically for stuff that's on hold or is parked or is blocked. For some reason, maybe there's some issues with it. Let's not focus on it. If there's an issue with it, let's just continue moving on, and someone else, like the product owner, maybe he or she can look after that. And this list is ranked in terms of its value to the client. Looks pretty simple. Now, this is a pull system rather than a pull-push system. So I would take something off here and I would pull it into in progress. And once it's done, I'd pull it into done. Now I've got capacity, because I don't want to do a bazillion things at once. Better that I just do a few. So now that I've got capacity of something isn't done, I can now pull something from to-do into in progress. That's the idea. Rather than saying, well, I'm finished with my analysis, so I'll take all my analysis and here you go, now build it. Here's the whole big chunk. No, this is basically based on a pull system. And this is how Toyota produces cars. And that's why they continue to be the #1 manufacturer of cars in the world. So not just software, manufacturing. So I started off with helping them to visualize their work. So we focused on not an as-is and to-be, in terms of an ideal state, and then suddenly we're in the to-be. No, I said, well, what do you do now? How do you do your work today? And let's visualize all of those parts. And so they did. All of those columns, I think it's to do, in work in progress, peer review, verification, and then done. And because this was a physical place, it enabled them to have a place that they could actually get together and interact. So individuals and interactions, back to the Agile Manifesto. And importantly, a physical space that they could interact with their internal customers, so their internal stakeholders, as well as their external ones. You see there, that's the team's product owner. Note the product owner isn't the client. The product owner is a member of the team. Because ultimately, it's easier to manage work when you can actually see it, hence visualize it. And for these guys, they also had a Trello board. So yes, they had a digital tool to be able to manage some of their documentation attached to specific tasks and specific activities. And that was to complement their physical space. And for them, it meant that all of their work for the team, they had a physical view of it, because this team was learning how to do it. A number of factors enabled them to do it much more effectively in a physical environment. Kinesthetic learning, so the act of moving things around, reinforces physically the mental process. Writing things down. If you actually write something down rather than type it, the neural connections in your brain are stronger. So writing things on cards. And all of those other sensory inputs that a physical board can provide, they helped to reinforce these new behaviours of being collaborative and working together. much more physical and sensory input than something digital can provide. So that's what they started to do with visualizing. Here's another example. This is a software team. They're using Kanban for their Scrum. So this is a Scrum team. They've got stuff for the next sprints, the stuff that's in progress, and the stuff that's done. You can see up the top, we know that they're up to day 17. And they are visualizing everything that goes on. Enough for them, for the team, to coordinate their work to get stuff done. Here's another example. This is a systems team. So we're talking hardware. They're using this one's an hourglass model where stuff starts at the top and then goes all the way down. Importantly, with all these examples, these are not tasks. These are the outcomes. Because a task is ephemeral. A task is something, just a note to say, don't forget to do this. So all the things that are going through the system are all outcomes. You can see here their boss do PDAs, develop a strategic plan, something to do with agile adoption. I put that one on his board because that's something that he needed to focus on. And so when this team ran into trouble and needed some help, they would then escalate stuff to their boss. It would go on his list, and he would then visualize his work that he was doing to support not only the organization but his team. This one is a program board for 10 teams delivering a very large outcome, and that's their backlog of issues, do the mitigating, monitoring, and closed. This is another one, a team, Scrum team, this one, using Kanban to deliver. They had whiteboard paint all over this wall, and so they were able to not only move their features in terms of all of the stages, but also to draw around it. This became a great space for them to not only discuss what is this feature, but also draw on the wall about all of the aspects in the interface, the data layers, the APIs, etc. You see here, visualizing their work, around their work. This one is the Masters of the Universe team, so a Scrum team using Kanban for their work, and they decided to take a little bit of a different approach. So you see this is Castle Grayskull, for those Masters of the Universe fans. And work would start off here this is all the stuff to do, this is the stuff that they're doing, this is their daily stuff here, and then stuff had to get done, and apparently that's, for some reason, Princess Peach is living in Castle Grayskull. But that was the way they decided to visualize their work. This one is 3 teams forecast the next 4 sprints, and the red lines are all of the dependencies between all of those teams. And representatives from the 3 teams would meet here twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, to talk about, well, what is your team doing? How does it affect and interact with the other teams? And what does that mean in terms of our collective contribution to our final outcome? This is another team, so you can start to see this one has decided to put in swim lanes. And their user stories through their sprint. This one is a thermometer model, so different again. Here's their backlog of stuff. This is the stuff that's not yet started. This is the stuff that's in progress. And they put in the people's names here, so that if you needed to take something, you'd take it from here and then put it underneath yours. This enabled everyone to see, well, are you doing too much? Are you overloaded? This one is only about a week old. I needed to create this for the team because as their coach, they've got learning outcomes. And so I visualized all the learning outcomes, not only to communicate to them, you've still got a lot of stuff to learn and a long way to go in terms of maturity for being agile, but also communication to a couple of other teams that we're also going to start to. One is about to adopt Scrum in a couple of weeks' time, and another one Kanban. And so this is also a communication to them about there are things to learn, and this is not just we'll just do training and that'll solve everything. This is a long journey. And this one here is their managers, because for them, understanding what Agile means to be able to support their teams is also an important part of this organisation's learning journey. So I visualised that as well. This is what it looks like when you've got 120 people, 12 teams, all collaborating together to deliver the same outcome. So these guys are using Scrum, and they're using a scaled framework called SAFe, Scaled Agile Framework. And this is their projection on a Kanban of 3 months worth of work. Red string, dependencies. Black string, dependencies with teams external. It looks like a bit of a mess, but it works for them. This is a leadership board. So again, we've got this is to do, in progress, and done, with a projection backwards of short, medium, and long-term goals, classified by people, processes, tools, technology, etc. So horizontal lanes. And this helps them to visualize how do they support their teams in relation to all their change initiatives. So lots of ways to visualize in terms of work. This is, importantly, this is not a Kanban board, even though the team thought that it was. Any idea why? Any reasons why you think this might not be a Kanban board? Too static? There's no movable. Yeah, so static. There's nothing to move. Maybe we'll come back to that at the end. So that's visualizing work. And what I remind teams as they start down and that they start getting started with Kanban is that there are many, many ways to visualize work. And as soon as if you choose a tool too early, you're going to constrain, the tool will always constrain the way that you work. Better that you start off, if you're co-located in particular, just visualizing stuff. And then as you improve, find a tool that then meets the way that you've decided that you need. In fact, this team has already changed their Kanban. They've been together for 2.5 months. They've changed their Kanban about 4 times already. But that's only the first thing. Visualizing is good, but it's not enough. The next thing to do is limit work in progress, or some people say work in process. Multitasking is deceptively time-intensive and wasteful. And as Jim Benson says, if you go to, he's got a great website called personalkanban.com. It's got some really, really great resources around effective use of Kanban. But he says you can't do more work than you can handle. Now, that sounds pretty straightforward, but it's not necessarily, there's a lot of work hidden in relation to what people do. It's bad ultimately because of this context switching. For every extra thing that you're doing, you take on roughly a 20% cognitive overhead. So if you do one thing, that's fine. You've got 100% capacity to focus on it. If you're actually doing 2 things, you've got 20% overhead for cognitive, for that cognitive load. So your effectiveness is really only 80%. If you're going to work on 2 projects, that means 40% and 40%. So you take on 3 things. Well, that's 2 lots of cognitive overload. That's 40%, which means you've got 60% left over, which means you've really only got 20 and 20 and 20, not 33 and 33 and 33, and so on and so forth. This is what the science tells us. And so some people go, well, if we can't take on multiple things at once, how about we just bring on more people to deliver more stuff? Now, again, let's throw people at the problem. That sounds like a good idea. Maybe we've got money and we've got people that are free, so let's throw more people at it. But unfortunately, this is really bad too, because we know from Metcalfe's law that in relation to teamwork in particular, the more people that you add to a problem, the amount of communication that's required increases exponentially. So let's say we have a 5-minute conversation. You've got 2 people, simple, 5 minutes. If we've got 5 people, well, that requires 10 connections, and suddenly that 5-minute communication becomes almost an hour. If we go all the way up to 12 people, a 5-minute conversation, because we've got 66 connections, and I know because I had to draw this by hand, I couldn't find a good example on when I did my Google search. 5.5 hours. We're going to get to a point, and I'm sure you've been in meetings that just simply go on forever and no decisions are made, probably because there's too many people in the room. And this is why. So when we say WIP, when we say work in progress, what is it that we actually really mean?
So what does limiting WIP really look like? So first we've got like our normal work in process. And this is like what we're doing on our project right now. And then there's project B, project C, project D. They all have their Kanbans. They all look really good. But then there's the stuff I have to do just because I'm employed by the company. So I might have to, answer a proposal or maybe onboard some new employees. So you start having meetings about all the work that you're doing, about all the projects that have already overloaded you. But what else could you be working on? Doing secret work that they won't tell anybody else about. And the reason is because they knew they were never going to get their other work done, so that they could feel like they were actual successful professionals. So they go to work to get paid, but after they get there, they tend to care. And they see things that could be improved. They'll have their pet project. And so they spend a lot of time thinking about these things. Now that I've said that, does it seem like impossible to actually finish something? Because that's what people are thinking when we go to them and say, hey, limit WIP.
And strangely enough, I've had exactly the same conversation with almost every team that I've coached. When I go, well, in order to do more, in order to get stuff done faster, do fewer things. And they go, well, that doesn't make sense. Surely, because all of these things are really similar, I'll just take on board all of that stuff and do it all at the same time. Because maybe it's sort of in the same code base, or maybe it's in the same module, or maybe they're all related. And the answer, funnily enough, the science says no. That's incredibly inefficient for reasons that we're going to have a look at. So for my team in particular, rather than saying, well, per project we'll have a Kanban, and different people are going to interact with that because we've got some hidden WIP going on there, obviously, and we've got cognitive overhead with multitasking because you've got to work on 3 projects. That's not necessarily going to be transparent to everyone. So we chose one Kanban for one team, a team dedicated to the delivery of anything that's in its list. But in order to see any of those higher level dependencies across the whole program of work, all of the projects that were in flight, we also developed a portfolio Kanban as well, and actually said quite explicitly, if multitasking at an individual level is bad, then multitasking across teams is going to be even worse. So let's make sure that we limit the total amount of things that we take on at once. It's like saying, well, how about we do 100 things? Well, everything is going to go slow. Much more slower than if I do just a couple of things. At the team level, it looked pretty much like this. So rather than having project A, project B, project C, and having their Kanbans, and having a resource pool and saying, well, you can do multiple things at once, so I'll put you 33% on this one, 33% on this one, and 33% on this one, because we want to optimize utilization. No, we said, well, we've got different clients and they've got different projects, and based on strategic goals, as well as understanding people's needs, we'll have a product owner, and that term comes from Scrum. For this team, we'll have a product owner, and that product owner will look at the various elements of all of these things and rank them in a backlog, for which the team can then see where all the pieces of all the projects are coming up. And maybe there's some estimation, maybe there's some work to do with the product owner for looking at costing for an upcoming proposal, so it's visible in their big list of work. So the product owner and his team, using this model, will then able to see and have transparency of everything that's coming up, and importantly engage with their product owner on a routine basis in order to understand, estimate, create granularity, so by the time it gets to the top of the list, then it's good to go. No false starts. No delivering and starting work that's not adequately prepared enough to deliver. This is what CA Technologies have reported on the impact of Agile in 2015. We can see that there is almost a 2-to-1 difference in throughput between teams that are 90% dedicated. That means team members that basically work as a single team, so dedicated to the team. 2-to-1 difference compared to teams that are 50% or less. You want to increase output? You want to increase the amount of stuff that you deliver? Visualize your WIP and dedicated teams. Easiest way to double your output. So that's limiting WIP. But in Kanban, this is really only the starting point. After we've now decided that we're going to visualize everything, we're going to have largely dedicated teams, we're going to bring work to the teams as opposed to send them to different projects. We've now got to step back and look at the flow of work. And that was my job as the coach with my team and their product owner. Looking at flow is about speed of movement through the whole system. Now that becomes really hard if you've got Kanban for project A, Kanban for project B, Kanban for project C. Very, very hard to see if individuals are overloaded or doing too many things at once. Much easier when we've got one team and one Kanban and the work coming to them. Only 2 metrics. For Scrum, obviously, you've got velocity, but if we're just going to use Kanban, and that's what this team was using, only 2 things. Lead time, cycle time. That's all I need to understand flow. This is cycle time. So once something starts, how long before it's finished? That's really all it is. How long does it take for something to go through that system? So let's look at an example at McDonald's. And have you seen some of them have like a point where you order and then you get to the next window and you pay, and then the next window you pick up your food? Well, let's say, for example, that at the first window it takes you about 20 seconds, and the next window to pay 30, and then to pick it up, that's 40 seconds. Which method is going to enable us to get faster, the fastest through from ordering all the way through to the end? Is it A? This sounds a bit like Horrible Histories, which my daughter always watches. What is the answer? Is it A, 1 customer at a time? So hands up if you think it's A, 1 customer at a time. Is that going to produce the fastest through the system? 1 person, good, all right. What about B, 3 customers at a time? Is that going to produce the fastest through drive-through? Hands up if you think B has a few people. Oh, yeah, that sounds about right. What about C, 5 customers at a time? Anyone for 5? Everyone's going, oh, I'm not going to say, in case I get it wrong. Well, let's see what that looks like. So this is 1 customer at a time, order, pay, collect. So 20 seconds and then 30 seconds and 40 seconds. And here's the red card. This is the one we're going to measure. And he can get to the end in about 90 seconds. All right. So what does 3 customers at a time look like? Oh, let's have a look. So wait till we get 3 customers in the system. All right, so they spend 20 seconds and then 30 seconds. And we can only have 3 at a time. So we've got to wait until one leaves before another one comes in. And now the red car comes in as our pace car, spends 20 because there's 3 cars in the system. And he then gets through at the end after 120 seconds. So 120 seconds, just by increasing the number of people in drive-through. Right, well, what about, it's not looking good, is it? No. What do you think will happen to 5? Is it going to go up or down? It's going to go up. How many people think it's going to go up? Oh, let's have a look. Let's see if it goes up. So let's put 5 cars into the system. There's 3, 4, 5. Okay, now we've got 5 cars in the system. Remember, a car can only enter once a car leaves. A bit like the Thunderdome, 2 men enter, 1 man leave. And so we're looking at 5 cars, 5 cars, 5 cars, and eventually we'll get to our pace car, our red one. And there he is. So 5 cars in the system. He's still spending 20 seconds and 30 seconds and 40 seconds. But obviously he can't get to the other window until the other car's clear. And as a result, 200 seconds. So just by having more things in the system, things go slower. So I decided to plot it out for you, work in progress from 1 all the way through to 5. I also looked at the number of customers served per second in terms of time. And we can see once we get to, so we got 90, we've got a lower rate, WIP of 2, cycle time's about 90 as well. We have an increase in the number of per second. We get to about 3. We're spending a little bit longer in terms of cycle time, so from the beginning till we get through to the end, but we're serving a little bit more. So what do you think the optimal number in terms of the number of items we have in flow at the same time is? So hands up for one. One, okay. Hands up for two. A few more. Hands up for three. Hands up for four. Does anyone think five? So WIP is not just as simple as fewer is better. There's going to be a sweet spot between the number of things we have in the system and the average amount of time that it takes to get through. So probably 2 would be fine. If we went up to 3, they're going to take 30 seconds longer, but we're going to serve slightly more people. Going to get slightly more people through the door. The way that I would help my teams to record this is really super low tech. For every day when we get together in front of our Kanban to talk about what our daily plan is, I put a dot. So, in terms of the amount of time that this particular user story, so it's a size medium as you can see, it's created on this date, the sprint started on this particular date, how long has this card, this feature, been in the system? I know it's after lunch. How many dots are there? How many? 6 dots. That means that this card has been in the system for 6 days. Now you notice there's 2 different colours. So we've used the numbers of days that the team is actively working on it is black, and the blue is the number of days that it's been blocked by some sort of external dependency. This helps us differentiate between the amount of effort that the team is contributing to a feature versus the amount of time that they might have to wait for someone else outside the team or even for the client to give feedback. Here's another example. So for their columns, so they go from upwards, like a thermometer, we've got each one has a different colour and the team just date it. And at the end, then they can add up how much time the card spends in each category, as well as the total amount of time to get through to the other end. And then there's this really pretty one. This is from a game, actually, but the day that it's ready to start work, the day that it's deployed, and therefore when we subtract the 2, then we get the time that it spends in the system. Pretty straightforward. That's all we need. Easy. Then we've got lead time. Now, lead time is just the time that it takes to wait. Like, if I give you something, how long before you can actually do it? And there's this lovely equation, Little's law. The average longest lead time equals cycle time times the amount you've got in the system at the same time. So let's take a really simple example. So let's say we're in the line to get some coffee. And the person in front of us could order up to 10 things. So they could order 1 thing, or maybe there's a whole one, maybe they could order up to 10 coffees. Let's say that each order item will take 1 minute. So what's the earliest time we're going to get to the front of the line? 1 minute. He could order up to 10 things. So the longest time we might need to wait would be 10 minutes. All right, what if there are 2 people in front of us? What's the shortest amount of time when we will need to wait before we can get to the front of the line? 2 minutes? What's the longest time? 20 minutes. Imagine now there are 10 people in front of us, so we've got quite a big queue. What's the shortest amount of time we'd have to wait? 10 minutes. What's the longest time? 100. So there is inherent variability as queues get longer, and one of the things that often teams fail to recognise is that when you promise something by a certain date but there's a really long queue, the inherent variability in delivery will mean that the further it is, the less likely you're able to predict when you can actually deliver it. So strangely enough, with these 2 things, I can do some really pretty stuff. This thing's called a cumulative flow diagram. And you can see here that I can say, well, between day 2 and day 6, this started off here at day 2, it'll probably get deployed at day 6, so that's how many days did it take to actually get over the line? 4 days. If I increase the number of items that I have in flow at the same time, so in progress, the lines will start to diverge. And it means that for delivery, for the stuff deployed, this will take longer. Because cycle time will increase. Pretty simple. But this is what I'm starting to teach this team now, to be able to not only look at their board, but also to look at lead time and cycle time and plot the amount of time that it spends in each of those categories, so we can then start to understand where are the bottlenecks for each of those parts. But that's still not enough for Kanban to work effectively. We need to also make those entry and exit criteria between all of those columns overt, so everyone knows, well, in order to get from this column, to example for this one, peer review, well, how does stuff actually get into that column? And importantly, when is stuff ready to get then to the next one? And for them, this is their peer review list. They make it overt. And if we can cross off all of those things, then it's ready to be pulled into the next column. The most common one you'll see in terms of criteria is something called definition of done. Any Scrum teams? Any people from Scrum teams here? Yeah, a few. Yeah. And this is basically the criteria for stuff to get into that column. There's this one, which I found online, which I thought was a great scribble. It doesn't need to be any more complicated than that. But Kanban requires that those exit and entry criteria are explicit. So that you can have confidence when you're downstream, that when something gets to you downstream, that it's met a quality criteria upstream. So it's a little piece of paper that one of my teams, basically they print out and they staple it to their user story, and as they're going through their work, they go, yes, I've done this one, check. Yes, I've done this, check. This one's not appropriate, so I'll just draw a line through it. But they make it overt. And this is one that I've been using particularly for government agencies to help them align with DTO's user-centeredness. Make sure things are, yes, tested and integrated, peer-reviewed, et cetera, findable, valuable. But this is their criteria for it to get into done. And that's what Kanban requires us to do. For each of those columns, you need your entry and exit criteria, whatever it needs to be, but so that people downstream understand that they're adhering to the quality criteria that they need to. Last thing, collaborate together to improve. And one of the easiest ways to look at this is in terms of waste. Is someone doing, when we're looking, we can see all of this work flowing into our system, does some of that work not contribute any value to anyone? We should ask ourselves, well, who is this for? Who is this piece of work for? And relative to all the other pieces of work, is it valuable? Now, it's important, because otherwise it wouldn't be there. And it's a priority, everything's priority number one. Yes, but different things have different value. So understanding for your team and for your organization how you define value and make it overt means that you can look at the flow of things moving through and say, look, this isn't of value or it's of less value. Let's focus on something that's of more value, greater value. Muri is overburdening people. So are they doing too much? What's one of the easiest identifiers to understand if people are doing too much? Whip. Are they doing too much? Unevenness. Are some people doing more than other people? Or are they doing really, really, really big things and really, really small things? Because really, really big things take a long time to get going and then take a long time to start, long time to stop. The Pop and Dex produced this list out of the Toyota production system, made it relevant to software, and basically said there are 7 types of waste that we should be trying to identify actively, both the team and their managers and their leaders, their lean leaders. Is there any partially done work? Have we forgotten one of those checkpoints in terms of getting work through the system? Are we delivering features that have not been asked for? Do we have changes in scope? Because if someone has a change, then we have to relearn. What about task and context switching? Are people doing too much? Well, that's waste. Handovers, they're also waste. In fact, all of those columns represent handovers. And the leanest teams just have 3 columns: to do, in progress, and done, because handovers are waste. Waitings and delays. Anyone ever have to wait 5-10 minutes for other people to arrive at a meeting? That's 5-10 minutes could have been spent doing other things. That's waste. And defects, so downstream work that you've got to fix. So Kanban as a framework says that Yes, visualize the work. Yes, throttle back the amount of stuff you do. Actively look and manage the flow of work. And to continuously improve, use the scientific method, which just means you've got an idea based on what you see, change one thing and one thing only. If I change 5 things and something bad happens, how do I know which one created a bad thing? Or if something good happens and I change 5 things, how do I know which one created a good thing? Or if I change 5 things and nothing happens, how do I know that one thing didn't create a good outcome and one thing created a bad outcome and they cancelled each other out? I won't know. So one of my favourite things to teach teams is this, the Toyota Kata, which just says what's the target condition, where you want to go, what's the current condition look like, what are the obstacles that are preventing you from getting there, and importantly, if you actually do succeed in changing one thing, what might that look like? Now, make that change. And then after you've changed, actually see, well, did I get what I thought I would actually get out of it? Did I get closer to that target condition? And if I didn't, well, what does that mean for my next learning step? Whose job is it to do it? Everyone's. If we're going to do all of these things, we need to turn our managers into lean leaders. Their job is to help us. If they want to make more money out of you, they need to help you. And helping you visualize stuff and limit your WIP is one of the most successful ways that they can do that. And for the team as well, knowing to be able to identify how to identify waste, what waste looks like, that's their job. Their job is to understand how to remove it as well. Sadly, 2016 State of Agile report reinforces that 40% of these initiatives fail because of lack of experience, because of the culture, and because of lack of management support. Some of these you can address over time. But one thing that you can't address is typical experience. If you don't have the experience, go and find people that have the experience and can pass that on to your teams to help them be more agile. That's one thing I love to do. Very passionate about it. Let's jump to conclusions.
I am Arthur, King of the Britons.
None shall pass.
What?
None shall pass.
But I must cross this bridge.
Then you shall die.
So...
Well, volume's crap, never mind. Kanban is more than visualizing work. This isn't a Kanban board. Why? Where's the flow? Can you see the flow? No. What about that first example? Could you see the flow of work through the system? No. They're not even limiting the amount of work they're taking on either. Way too much stuff going on. This is not Kanban. It's a task board. I mean, visualization is good, but it's just about tasks. To do Kanban well, it's a suite of 5 things. All of these things need to be done in order for it to be effective. And for this team using Kanban, they had a 50% improvement in their output over the last 2 weeks. They've only been doing this for 2.5 months. For you guys, 200 to 400% is easy to achieve. Very, very easy to achieve. But it takes focus and discipline. And importantly, it takes time. And that's the end. Thank you very much for your time.